more and more people on YouTube are explaining that there's crashes going on. Or Phil, who works in my office, said he watched a guy yesterday who was talking about how the stall. This is like if you've been around for the last crash, as I was in Florida, I had 4 properties there before I came back. There was a stall. It didn't last very long, but it was like a buyer strike and a seller strike. The buyers weren't paying, and the sellers were like, "I'm holding out," and there was a stall, and then it happened. Now, yesterday I saw another video from a guy explaining that the builders are now their prices are 15 to 25% lower, and before they were like keeping the prices high by buying down loans and spending money that way. Someone threw the profit reports of the builders, and there were their profits margins have been squeezed as low as they've experienced over the whole term of the graph. I think they were looking at like 20, 30 years. Um, and the builders understand the market, and they've lowered their prices 15 to 20%. Whereas apparently a lot of sellers are just sitting. This is what the people on the ground are saying, are sitting there with overpriced properties that just aren't selling, and there's nothing moving. December, if you look at the graphs, this December, and I think a few months back, the lowest amount of transactions on record. That did happen back then. But let me tell you something to Californians. I went from California. We sold a house in we were married. Our house in Carlsbad doubled. I was like, you mean I can take out? It seemed like so much money to me in the early 90s. I could take out almost $400,000 and not have to pay taxes on it, because that had been a previous change in like 86 with Reagan. And it's like $400,000. This is before the rest of the country experienced. $400,000 was an incredible amount of money back then for a young guy, fairly young. And I was like, I can go to Florida and buy these properties that produce income, and we ought to do that. And we spent, by the time we're done selling our house, and we traveled with the kids for a month visiting relatives, and then we went down to Florida, the prices had gone up. And so the properties that paid for themselves with rentals disappeared. Nevertheless, we got into 4 properties. And then for a while, our 400,000, there was probably about $1 million in equity across those 4 properties. We were living in an okay place, but we wanted to be close we missed the right school district by very little. So lesson 1, when you're working with buyer's agents, make sure your buyer's agent knows that exact area you're working in. I've told people that every time they've consulted with me ever. I'm like, if you're working with a buyer's agent, first of all, you should probably go direct to the listing agent anyway if you know what you're doing. But if you need a buyer's agent because you're from out of town, find out how many properties they've worked on in those areas, or if they live there, and only work with them in that area. You don't let them take you all over where you could be making mistakes like I did. We bought in the right neighborhood, just not the right schools in that neighborhood. There was a line across the street, across one of the main roads, where some people went to the good schools where the kids weren't fighting in the high schools. It was just a much better neighborhood than mine, which was really only a mile away. So we were living in the house that we didn't want to live in, and I was building a house for spec. I took my investment profits here, and I was building a house for spec. And the mistake I made was I asked my wife what she would like in it. I mean, she knew it was on for spec, but when we had an offer of $930,000, and she was pregnant, there was just no way I was going to sell it. So we had 2 houses, the one we were living in, that house, and 2 houses that were also building on spec. The market collapsed. It went down. Those houses lost probably 20% in the first month. As soon as that stall stopped, the prices just came in lower. Because Florida has a lot of turnover, and some people were smart. They just got out. So it's like nothing. Flood of properties onto the MLS at lower prices. Boom, gone. 30, 40%. We were, and it kept happening. Like this was the issue. Now, if you're trying to get out, the buyers would be under contract with you. They'd have a 30-day. This happened to me before I was a realtor. This is why one of the reasons I became a realtor. There was a 30-day contract. Strike that. At one point in time in Florida, I did sit for the law exam, and I did sit for the real estate exam. So the timing of this is a little off in my head. But at one point, the houses were going down so that you'd be under contract, and the buyers would see while you were under contract, they didn't want your home anymore, and they'd back out. So lesson 1 is shorten time frames when you're selling in this market. If they've negotiated a great price with you, you've got to get them ready to go so that they either waive some contingencies that would let them out, or they're like, I'll do the inspections in 1 week and then I'm going to close. And if people need loans, then you have to worry about that, because when the markets are going down, buyers will back out and say, I can get a better deal across the street or down the block, especially in places like Florida, or, well, any places where there's a lot of new builds and people turn over. And there's a lot of houses for sale. So if you're going to sell your home, act quickly, act decisively, and do what real, and here's the advice that most people hated. You need to be the best price on the market, because you want your house to clear. If you've decided to sell, decide to sell. Don't say, I'll be up here and wait. I mean, unless you're saying I'm willing to wait for the market to turn, or this spring, I don't believe it's going to be a bad spring. I think those houses will be bought and then they'll get to my price. Fine, if that's your strategy. But if you're saying, I'd like to sell my home, but I need this price, that's a mistake in declining markets, because the markets will not get to your price if they're going down. So you're the story, the warning story listing realtors tell all their other clients. They're like, see this property? It was only a little over the market 3 months ago, and it's still sitting there, and they've lowered the price 50 to 100,000 twice, but they're never lowering their price enough, and they're just chasing the market down from above. And you are the warning story. So I'm not saying I'm not saying sell your home. I'm saying if you decide to sell it, mean it, accept it, look at the comps, know what the prices are. Actually, that's bad advice. Don't look at the comps, look at the prices, and hope there's comps justifying where you want to go. But like a lot of areas, because they had these pauses, and we're probably seeing this with days on market going up in California, some of those pauses are the buyers rejecting the prices, but there's no comps showing up. So you're going in, like, this is a problem realtors have. You'll be going in and you only have comps from 3 or 4 months ago. You being aware, you're like, there's no way. Well, there's not no way, but you're like, in all probability, the buyers that are interested have weighed and said that neighborhood's overpriced, so we're not going there. Like, you have to worry about that risk. I mean, given the amount of normal turnover, right? So if you've been on pause and other prices are down all around you, and you're not really insulated from that, like maybe there's, tremendous properties, beach properties, I'm not necessarily talking about. I'm talking about competitive properties where there's other houses in your price range in other neighborhoods, other places that serve as good comps. So you'll see no one buying. You'll see properties on the market that aren't selling. And if you're doing a total market analysis, you're taking in that data and saying, well, there's a reason these aren't selling and those are over there, because those people already took the 15 or 20% price drop. So comps can be irrelevant. High comps are irrelevant if there's competition for you in your neighborhood, like those houses that people can price well because they're all part of the same type of house. If they're down here and you go on up there and you can't explain why your house is worth that much more than those, I would say, why are you bother sell? Why try to sell? You're not really trying to sell. You're trying to get money for your home that's probably not there anymore. So you're welcome to do that, but not if you think you're going to need the money. Like if you're like, I really wish I had 200,000 and now I'm only going to get 125. Well, if the market turns, and we'll know this is why I'm saying this, in a few weeks, we're going to know if prices are going up anymore in California or Southern California. But this is not about trying to get 2 or 3 year ago prices. You should be saying, what is the market now? What are the prices now? What am I likely to get? 2 or 3 year prices are irrelevant. Now I wanted to get to the stories of the people. This is what made my job rewarding, interesting, sad. The financial problems that happen when people's houses are gone. First of all, if they were catching out or they were using the properties, their spigot of a good lifestyle It's gone. There sometimes hardships were caused. People had lost their jobs. Businesses were declining. People weren't still working, but not making as much as they were, and there were problems. I mean, I remember people in my office saying, and this was a lot of money back then. I make $150,000. My wife makes money, and we can't make ends meet. And now you can just say 300. I think. I mean, that's how it seems to me, anyway. They're like, between my mortgage and the expenses and the schools, it's crazy. We're just not making it. I even have assets. We're not making it. If you're going to come to that realization, I would suggest to you that there were a lot of cautionary tales sitting in front of me who are people who needed the money that they kept pouring into their house. Sometimes lent money, sometimes borrowed money, second money, sometimes retirement. They tapped into their retirements trying to keep the dream alive. If that dream, when you're done, is going to leave you with no options, think about your options ahead of time. It was very serious. I don't know if it's going to happen in California the way it did. I know there's a lot of people who want houses here who don't have them. So there's probably a baseline that is not like Florida or Texas or Arizona, where the builders were completely overbuilt. And that's what I'm reading. I can't say that. I used to, 20 years ago, I could have told you that because I lived in Florida. I assume it's still going on, but I don't know that for a fact. But I do know one of the most impressive things about why Florida is going to lead this down is that there are people whose, what they call escrow there would be like the taxes and the insurance, their payments are higher now than their mortgage. So the economist in me, well, okay, let me explain. All the realtors in California know a lot of the buyers buy a payment. They're like, what am I going to get? So they go in, whatever they're most qualified for, the monthly payment they qualify for is what that ends up being the house they buy. Because in the market, you're always like, I want to squeeze into the best house. I want to get in the best house. It's a good investment. So understanding that relationship between people's monthly payment and the price of the home is very strong and very easily understood in California. Some realtors will say people are buying a payment. They're not buying the house. It's not like I buy the house and then I figure out what it costs because I can afford the house. It's what's my payment, and they go around shopping in that price range. To some degree, a market like Florida is a little different because some people go down there and saying, this is my retirement house, and they're going to live within their means. So they're not buying the payment as much as the house that they want to afford. So the relationship's not going to be 100%. But overall, you have to understand, or we have to see the relationship. It's not just mortgage, it's mortgage and monthly costs. It goes into what people can buy, and that there is a strong relationship to the price of the home. So if this part goes up significantly to the point it's larger than the mortgage payment, the price of houses has to drop significantly to make them affordable to the same people on that mortgage level, on that income level. Right? Before someone making, let's say you can buy a home 4 times your yearly income, maybe 5, but it's about 4. So 100,000, someone making 100,000 could qualify for a $400,000 or $500,000 house, first time home buyer. And that would be with the normal expected interest rates and taxes. And normally you might expect that. Like I remember living in Florida, insurance was pretty cheap. Property insurance wasn't that bad. So maybe you had the mortgage and your escrow would be maybe 20% of that mortgage, and that would have been high. It was probably closer to 10%. Okay, maybe it was 20%. So like in California, yeah, I can't even do it on mine because we've been living in this house so long. But as this doubles or triples, the lever, the 4 times, goes up significantly. I wish I'd done the math, but I think you understand. So that like if if normally you've got $6,000 or $5,000 a month, and it bought you that's 60,000 a year. Well, let's say it was 10,000 a month, and that bought you 120 times. Well, that bought you a $500,000 house. Now, if this thing that was 20% is now another 100%, the price of the homes is going to have to drop significantly. I'll do the math in the next video. Okay, so now I wanted to get to lessons regarding what happens if the market does disintegrate here in California, because we know that I was very surprised to see last week there were 653 short sales on the CRMLS. And so if there's that many short sales, and we know they're frequently around the places where the new builds happen and the builders are now undercutting, there's tens of thousands of homeowners who don't have any equity in their home, which I guess is all right if they're not selling. But if they have to sell, they're again going to have to make their house the right priced home on the market. And they're going to be what I would call low equity seller, what might be a pre-foreclosure candidate, because it depends on where they sell their price of the home, if they're going to have enough to pay the real estate fees and the closing costs. So the next warning is, do not lock in to long-term real estate contracts in down markets. I would say never anyway, but in a down market, you might need other options besides selling your home. And you might not want the person selling your home to be the person that does your loan workout with you, because a realtor can only sell a home. So one loan workout is a short sale, but in the beginning of a down market, short sale, if you're trying to protect your credit, is probably not the way to go. I mean, you would want to press other levers, gain other leverage over the bank over short sale. Eventually, I would expect when the lenders get a full grasp of the area, short sale could be something that you would consider in the beginning. But even then, like if I'm a homeowner and I'm going to have to take a hit, and I don't want to pay a lawyer to try to do the deed in lieu while my credit's good, and I don't want to work with a lawyer who maybe could get a short sale done while I'm still current. And I'm not saying that happens all the time. It does, but not all the time. Not even 50% of the time. Most of the time, banks are like, no, we're not going to do it. And then we argue. I try to escalate, and sometimes they'll consider it, but sometimes they don't. It's worth a try. But right now, the foreclosure timeline in California is a full year. If you are going to get credit damage and you have talked to an attorney and you know the bank can't come after you for the money from a foreclosure, and you're not worried about the tax consequences, which you discuss with a lawyer, and you're accepting credit damage, you can still want to mitigate it, but you're accepting it. Would you really want to sell your home right now? I mean, if even if it went down by 50%, if you're insulated from taxes, you're insulated from the deficiency because of the law, wouldn't you want to live in your house for a year for free? So why? I know I'd like to not have to pay anything on my house for a year. I mean, if I'm going to take the credit damage, I might as well get the benefits. So really, you'd want to talk to a lawyer, figure out how to extend the timeline as long as possible, because now we have more tools that you don't even have to file bankruptcy necessarily anymore to get 45 to 90 more days. We've got a federal law that you would expect to be tacked onto the California foreclosure timeline. So if you're like 110, 120 days, and you add another 120 days, and then you add the AB 2924, is it 2424? The 45 to 90 days that you can get if you notice, well basically, because you can't concurrently track short sales. I mean, can't concurrently track foreclosures and loan workouts like loan mods or short sales. You get one law that gives you 45 to 90 days, and then you can put a halt on this while they're considering it. I mean, you're looking at like a year, if you, or maybe more. I mean, we had clients who were in their houses for 3 to 5 years, but that wasn't the minimum. I'm just saying the minimum's now looking like it's far more than double than it used to be for foreclosure. Because, and by the way, by the very fact I'm making this argument with you is the reason why I would expect, we did deeds in lieu while people still didn't take credit damage, and we could negotiate for how it was reported on their credit. we now have a massive lever against them. So why not consider a deed in lieu instead of a short sale? I mean, it would, if you could afford it. I mean, because you could try it yourself, but I don't know that you're going to get the leverage that you could with an attorney. And I did some deeds in lieu back then for $3,000. It really depended on how much work. I would do it for a flat fee, and I would depend, like different banks took different amounts of work, and I knew that what those banks were like back then. But there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't start with a short sale. You'd start with a deed in lieu, just because it's going to give you more leverage to get the result you want. Like I don't see how you're going to get it, the result of keeping your credit fine doing a short sale with a realtor at all, really. You're going to want an attorney on your realtor team. Realtors, you should work with attorneys to help your clients. Now, I'm going to go over and just do a little more. I think this is interesting. You're going to see the prices of homes. You're going to see some of the short sales that we did. And we're going to go through and maybe do a little bit. We're going to go to the Wayback Machine for upsidedownrealestate.com. And I've resurrected that site last week, but we're going to see some of the, I think might be interesting. So I'll give you my reflections on why I was reviewing this. So this was the front page, and over time, after listening to a lot of clients, they were like, I'm glad I found your website, because I got conflicting information all over the net. So of course I put it up there. I gave my clients stories, like some of the things that marketing experts now teach people about the internet. When I was doing, you can go back, I have videos from 2007, 2008. I worked with so many people because Yahoo cited my website nationally. Google had it in the top rankings for like deed in lieu, short sale, foreclosure defense, all over California. I was getting calls. I couldn't even keep up with my calls. Like I'd have a realtor talking to me about a deal we were working on, because I was referring them out at first, even though I had a broker's license. I was doing the law work. They were doing the real estate work. And he's like, John, that's insane. You need to be a broker. So A, you can watch what's going on in your files. B, like I get a short sale approval, and you're telling me I have to spend 3 weeks getting my client released from the deficiency in writing, and you're helping. And my broker saying, screw him. We got the deal done. Let's get paid. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I had been referring short sales out to 4 or 5 different realtors. I had no idea the pressure that their brokers were putting on them to not do the right thing at times. So I was like, oh boy. So I did. I started a brokerage. I had a broker's license. I opened my brokerage for things besides my own deals. And we started doing it. But his point was, while he was sitting there in my office, he said, John, you don't understand real estate. You just got 7 come list me calls. That doesn't happen in real estate. And I was like, oh, interesting. I didn't know, but I was writing stuff that resonated with people. You find conflicting foreclosure and walkaway info on the net. And this would be back then. Like today, I just learned, I was starting my marketing for this again. And I was using an AI, and the AI knew what I'm doing, resurrecting upside down real estate. And it was giving me these search terms that I thought were like, well, why would an individual be looking for a recourse, non-recourse analysis? Well, that's what this website was promoting. And it's almost like some of that work became what the search engine now considers one of the terms I need to put in my ad on a pay-per-click ad so that it's relevant. It gives me a high relevance score. So I don't know whether people are searching on it or it's just important to the AI to do Google AdWords. Google said you have a poor score because you don't have these terms in your ad. And some of those were like, I was like, those are kind of proprietary to me. Why? I couldn't believe that Google cared about these terms. And these were terms, this was the first website talking about it. I mean, before that, lawyers understood this stuff at bankruptcy firms, particularly, but it wasn't up on the web. Lawyers were loath to put up information on the web back then. That was our proprietary information. So, the world's changed a lot since then. So then I was like, you need to be a straight shooter who leverages California law. I still use that word. I can't believe you would try to do a short sale with a bank, with a bank's collections department, and not do leverage law to get the deal done on your terms, in terms of whatever those terms are. And for some people, if you're protected by 580B or 580D or 580E, and you're like, well, I'm okay on my debt, I'm okay on my taxes. I'm like, well, why would you take the way realtors get credit scores reported? Like, why aren't you fighting for that, for leveraging it? Well, one, they're not licensed to do it or talk to you about it. But why would you? Like why wouldn't you leverage law to get the workout, to get the results of the workout you want? You have a house. The bank wants to get paid on it. Their fiduciaries, the loss mitigation department has a fiduciary duty to their lenders. They're supposed to get back as much of their asset as they can. And you can sit there and deprive them of that asset for a year. You can put renters in there who are going to get cash for keys. I mean, sometimes you have to educate them. They're in other states. They think they're holding the cards. Oh, well, we can foreclose. And like, my clients already accepted that eventuality. Like, we're trying to do something better with you. Oh, you're going to get tax problems. Not my clients, not in this scenario, not with these loans. And I'm being kind of arrogant there, but the point is, sometimes they're willing to learn. Sometimes they're not willing to learn, but sometimes they are. And those are the people you get the great deals from. And the ones that aren't willing to learn, sometimes you can escalate it to like, I'm going to have to ask you for the investor. I'm not going to give it to you. Okay, well, then I'm going to use federal law to find out who these investors are. Then I'm going to explain that I presented these things to you as your fiduciary duty, and you didn't care. I don't think they really cared, but sometimes I got escalated, and someone who knew would call up. Like, I was talking to Phil. We were eventually put in the president's office. Like, someone had a desk. They literally said, we're starting this for lawyers who do this a lot. And my office is literally next door to the president's office. So I can just ask him what we want to do. And then eventually other people are claiming they got to the president's office too. True or false, I don't know. You believe legal opinions and tax advice should come in writing from experienced lawyers. In fact, so does the California Association of Realtors. If you see my short sale listing addendum, they're like, realtors will not tell you what your best choices are. Realtors will not give you information about tax. They will not give you information about credit. They will not give you information about the law. They will not explain to you if you're protected. That's in the short sale listing addendum that you're going to have to sign. You have a credit score, assets, or future income you wish to protect. Right. Yet, you have read most short sales negotiated realtors leave the sellers exposed to future collection actions. Okay, that's a change. Because of 580E, if a realtor does a good short sale, and that's the first if, because again, less than 50% of realtor short sales close, realtor negotiated ones. So that's an if. But if they get it done in 580E, on its face, in the law, says you should be protected from the bank coming after you for the deficiency. It's basically saying in a short sale, the bank accepts the property back or the deal that they do, if it's a second, as full settlement. So they can't collect on the deficiency. However, some banks still do. Some banks still require things like payments now, or selling your assets, or having you sign an agreement, or it was contributions from the seconds all the time. They're just like, I don't care. We're only getting 3,000 to 5,000 from the first. We want more. And sometimes, depending on where their loans were, you could say, well, that's illegal, not just California, but according to federal guidelines. Sometimes they'd say things like, we're a federally chartered bank. We're not covered by California law in this matter. I mean, I've had collection people who then they got defending my clients. And then the collection people hired a firm in San Francisco to sue. I don't know why. I guess they were thinking they're going to get to sue them up in San Francisco. And, we proved to them that under California law, they were wrong. I talked to the lawyer on the phone. He was a younger guy. He tried all the lawyer stuff. And I was like, yeah, well, that's interesting, but 580E, 580B, 580D, how do you get around that? I don't understand. And, eventually I suspect he told their investors back in another state that they couldn't proceed properly here in California. So anyway, then my clients got sued in one of those Midwest states. So, you'd really like to have your approval letter. And again, car short sale addendum, have your approval letter reviewed by a lawyer. You'd really like to have your approval letter mirror California law. Now, that always can't be done. So then you need to understand the risks and what someone's game planning for you. We would game plan it. Like, do you think they're going to come after you? What would you do then? You'll win, most likely, very, 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 very likely, but it could be a problem. So do you want to wait another 3 or 4 weeks, try to push this where it might turn into a foreclosure? The buyer might walk, or do you want to take this deal right now? It really depends on people when their credit, short sale at the end of the short sale crisis, short sales weren't really much better for people's credit than bankruptcy. Their credit was, if they spent a year, they already had a lot of dings on their credit. Their credit probably may already been rebounding. And what that short sale mark or foreclosure mark would do, well, there's 2 things everyone should need to know. There's your credit score that bounces all around when you're not paying. And then there's the mark where they say legally settled, but for less than the full amount. That's a bad mark. And it's whether the banks want to do business with you in the future. That's where you'll know whether they're thinking your foreclosure or short sales different. I mean, some banks look at them as the same. Some banks don't, in terms of when they're going to lend to you. I thought the smartest thing I ever heard was when I was talking to someone who had, someone I gave credit to. I was like, this person knows what they're talking about. They work for a bank, and this is a real position. He was like, I personally will look at a short sale and say, those people worked with me to try to get me a result that I might have been acceptable to me. So I'm going to lend to someone who did a short sale before I would lend to do, he used a curse, but he said, before someone just walked away and told me to F myself. I think his perspective was interesting and probably right, but that's not the way all banks look at it. So why do the short sale? Only to face collection later. Banks are starting to pursue the remaining loan balances. So this was happening. One of the other things banks started to pursue was comparing your short sale package with your hardship letter. So like, think about, your loan package. So when you were applying for the loans, especially people who work for themselves, they were probably showing how strong they were. And then in a hardship, your realtor is telling you, you gotta show a hardship. Your hardship has to show that you can't make these payments. You have to explain why it's happening. You probably want to show that it's not temporary, in order to get approved. And you're like, well, if I do that, I'm now going to be looking like a fraud. Well, you don't want to be a fraud, not just because they won't go after you, but you'll also lose the protections of the short sale law. So before you fudge things on your hardship package, consider trying to do a workout where you don't you don't use a hardship package, or you don't have to display your assets or show your assets. Again, not easy, but like if your alternatives, I take a foreclosure and I don't have to worry about the deficiency. I won't have to worry about taxes. I just have to worry about my credit, or I'll do a deed in lieu while I'm current. And if not, we'll do our walkaway plan. And then we'll also extend out the time for another 90 days. Those are your options that we're going to weigh. I mean, there's other loan workouts, but I keep going back to the deed in lieu in the beginning of the cycle. Seems so much better to me than a short sale, to start with a short sale, unless you have to go somewhere fast. You figure that if you're going to do a short sale and your realtor will make a nice paycheck, you'd like to have a lawyer who not only renders opinions, but actually negotiates the approval terms if needed. Right. I mean, the realtors are still going to make big money from selling your home. Shouldn't there be a lawyer on your team? Realtors, if you contact me, I will work with you. We'll create an upsidedownrealestate.com certified specialist. We'll work together. We'll train you on the process. I can also accept the way you do things. I don't have to dominate, but as long as we're helping the clients, we can work together, and we can do it cost effectively. Your client's protected. In this cycle, we were negotiating short sales and loan workouts for clients with property in Florida, while California realtors were still calling themselves luxury home specialists. This is a really interesting point. Florida fell apart a year before California did. We had 4 properties. It was killing us. The one we sold, that's where, it was under contract. Properties were dropping. He came back and said they found mold. You could find mold in the air in Florida. Literally, I had people come in because we had to sell it again. They're like, there's no mold here. but they backed out. I probably shouldn't agreed to the a mold inspection that would give them 21 days or whatever they had. I should have shortened the time frames to 7 or something. So we were there, and I'm glad I was helping people. I did pass the bar in Florida, and I was helping people, and they had no anti-deficiency statutes there. So it was harder to get deeds in lieu done there. And so I was like, I started blogging about it. My neighbor said that he started using Blogger, and he was being cited in newspapers as if he was somebody, as in getting on a couple of talk shows just from using Blogger. And he was like, Google loves itself, so just start using Blogger. And I did. And then I was like, okay, I got the URL upsidedownrealestate.com, and I looked at him. I said, that's $1 million URL. And he didn't even understand what upside down was. And I go, well, that's because real estate hasn't been down in 7 or 8 years, but it's a popular term once it starts happening. And so I started blogging, and then I got to the top, and I even moved back here while I was still getting leads on this website from a lot of parts of the country. And not as a lawyer. I mean, I couldn't do it. I'd refer them out, but we were literally renting a home in Carlsbad, and our neighbors were like, why aren't you buying a home? And the first few times this came up, my wife had it also happen to her separately. We're like, they just can't imagine properties going down in California. There's such a mantra here. There was real estate never goes down. And that wasn't even true. It went down right after I got out of law school in the 90s. And that's why I was defending real estate brokers in court. My first trials were defending real estate brokers and sitting in an office next to a guy who was doing bankruptcies, where I learned, well, I did some of the real estate work, and some of it was with the litigation with the brokers, but that's where upside down and all the terminology came about. And so prices had gone down in the very early 90s in San Diego, but everyone, even realtors were denying prices could go down. So we were living here in the bubble, people thinking prices wouldn't go down. We're like, we just stopped talking about it. We're like, we can't tell people that they're about to lose everything. They just didn't want to hear it. And we're making our choice not to buy. And then literally, like, we were here almost a full year before it hit. So another side note of that is, like, I remember everyone talking about that Paulson guy being a genius because he had a hedge fund, and Goldman Sachs, I think it was the bank, and he put together a deal, and they sold some sort of structured puts or contracts, who knows how they arranged it, custom shorts, and they got a hedge fund in Europe to swallow it, and he made crazy amount of billions of dollars. And I was like, and they were calling him a genius, and I'm like, he probably had property in Florida, because we saw it happening real time. That's what's happening now. The people on the ground who understand what that pause is, and the people on the ground who know what it means. This is worse, actually, that it's so expensive, the escrow component, that the insurance and the taxes are so expensive that they're overwhelming people's mortgages. People understand that means property prices have to compress in those states. So the question is, will it hit San Diego? Will it hit Southern California, Riverside? Riverside's already got some short sales. San Bernardino had 70 short sales. There's parts of Northern California where it's happening. I'm not going to predict, but I just put a lot of work into upside down real estate this week. Now, what else that I think was interesting? I thought that we could see, this was an interesting thing. I had, so here, you want to work with someone who proves they have negotiated and closed dozens of short sales. So I was like, I wonder if I click that link, if it's actually going to show some of my short sales. This was 2010. Because short sales weren't easily negotiated back then. 15 or 25% was the only success rate most realtors had. And we were holding out for anti-deficiency language too. But you could see on my website, favorite real estate's totally changed since then. but at one point in time, I could just pull up short sales, sold short sales, and the prices are interesting. Like some of these are nice homes, right? 1 acre Tudor home in Escondido. Well, actually 775, and that's interesting. Like here's a house in Carlsbad, right? It looks like a Carlsbad house. Where is it? San Marcos. Okay, 540. Cherry Blossom, San Diego, 529. La Tortola, 92129. I remember those people. Remember those people too. Oh, I ranked them in order. That's why the prices are going down. So Chula Vista for 360, 3-bed, 2 baths, 2,156 square feet. Amazing. This might be the one I sold and my brother bought. Full disclosures to the people. In fact, there was a realtor in my office who knew my brother was looking. He's like, John, why aren't you selling that to your brother? And I was like, I didn't want to have any obvious conflicts. And he's like, just tell the people you're negotiating the short sale with, and tell your buyers and see if they care. And no one cared. So I owe David my brother. He moved ever since. He lives in Texas now, but that was a good move by David. So we can see we had negotiated Citricata Circle. I remember this house, a townhouse, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,123, 320,000. It was a nice location. Oh, this could have been, no, I think that's cheaper. So that was the Camino de Grazia. Let's see if it's the same. Camino de Grazia. This one was 2-bed. Oh, these are, no, my brother wanted, I guess I sold a few there. My brother bought a 1-bedroom. So, I mean, look at some of these prices. Santa Leo Hills, short sales. 2-bed, 2-bath, 1,100 square feet, Santa Leo. My mom used to always tell me it was supposed to be San Alejo. I was like, in Spanish, it looks like Alejo. Okay, so that is, if you're going to work with someone doing a short sale, you probably want to have that sort of experience. Let's go back. Let's see if I can pull it back, and then we'll wind this up. Let's see, anything. Oh, 7 things lender fear. This should be interesting. Inform borrowers who utilize the full force of California no deficiency protections. Inform borrowers who have an attorney to review their short sale terms. Many banks accept short sales and then pursue the borrowers for the deficiency later. Borrowers who decide to assert this is like zombie loans right now, except they waited too long, I would say, most of the time. Well, no, not if the people stayed in the house instead of doing the short sale. They just stopped paying the second. Borrowers who decide to assert their legal rights prior, those people, I would do a short, by the way, I would do a quiet title action on those, in those situations. If you're still in the home, but the lender still has a lien against it, the second lender. Borrowers who decide to assert their legal rights prior to going into default on their loans. Right. This is, I'm saying to you today, the same things that I was saying back then. Like, don't start with a short sale. Try to soften the lender up to get your results. You may or may not be able to, but we have a lot of reasons to do that. A lot of laws. We make them jump through a lot of hoops producing proof of things before, sometimes they're like, well, what do you want? Literally, they'll say, well, why are you doing this? What do you want? And we're like, well, glad you asked, because I told someone that 2 weeks ago, but until I did this, it didn't happen. Sellers who care enough about their assets or future earnings to assure they have a lawyer doing the negotiating or at least monitoring the sale, with a typo. Homeowners who hire experienced negotiators. Homeowners, this is also the thing. Realtors got a little better at negotiating because the people who were good at it, who showed the patience, who didn't mind when the bank asked for the package 7 or 8 times because they were stalling, they were trying to clog all this stuff in the pipeline. The realtors who could keep their packages together and check in on a systematic basis prevented the banks from saying, "Oh, we didn't have any activity, we closed the file." They just made up all these rules to close the file. So someone who was checking in with them, maybe on other files, but while they were on the phone, they were always talking. Those people got deals done. Regular realtors rarely got them done. Homeowners who request the lenders produce proof of ownership. This was a big thing back then. I doubt it's going to be as big a deal now. Homeowners, last Bank of America and Countrywide. I guess I forgot about that, but maybe proper disclosures used to not get made and they can't produce. They did. This is still the fantastic advice. Do not, if you're contemplating listing your home with realtors and you have an equity position where you're like, if we get the price I need, I won't be short. But if there's a chance prices are going down or it's a little softer than you want, and so let's say your home, you owe $1 million, and you're like, my home's worth somewhere more than $1 million, but probably not 1,080,000 or 1.1 million. It's in that, it's over $1 million, but it's less than 1.1. If your home's in that range, one, do not sign a listing agreement that doesn't say in writing, signed by the broker, you can get out at any time with 24-hour notice. Sending a text, I mean, it should be simple. And also make them send you, because they should know you they should be doing the research. They're like, oh, this person is a potential foreclosure. I need to make sure I understand what's going on in the area and the pricing, and I need to be able to explain things to them in the limited manner that realtors are licensed to do so. So make them send you the short sale listing addendum. I have videos on that. And then ask them questions about it. And see if they actually are trying to pitch you and sell you on selling your home, or they're actually concerned and like, those are good issues. Yes, you're going to need a lawyer to review an approval letter because there might be terms on it that aren't good to sign. So again, this is massive right now. If they're going to do a short sale, they should prove that they've negotiated a bunch of short sales. You could ask for short sale approval letters. Exactly what was released. That's not as important if you understand what I said now, but you'd want to read them anyway. Ask your realtor to put his or her advice in writing. This is the most important. I'd say ask your realtor to put their tax and credit information in writing, signed by their broker. And you can even ask them, what happens if the release doesn't release me from the loan, or they ask me to sign something and say I still owe some money, or they ask me to bring contributions. It's really a trick question. They're not supposed to answer. Oh, this is another point. The Mortgage Debt Forgiveness Act expired December 31st, 2025. Hasn't been renewed yet. So, well, it wasn't renewed a week ago when I checked in mid-January. Ask who receives the legal releases and advise the seller to go to closing. Right. Oh, that's another good point. You can't have, when the approval letters come in, you can't have your realtor or escrow send that approval letter to the buyer, not until you've reviewed it. You don't want to cause problems. So you want to control your people, the experts, or the people doing the work. If you have two loans, this is a legal question. It's also a strategy question. Your realtor absolutely should not tell you to go into default on your senior loan. Never do that without legal advice. Never. If you make any money at all, work with that. If you're making no money, work with that lender. Don't get behind with that lender on a second loan unless you know whether that junior loan's a recourse loan or not, because you could become a sold out junior, and that could be very bad for you. Ask your short sale expert why a homeowner with purchase money loans might want to take a foreclosure rather than the rest being responsible for loan balances. That was a risk back then. Now the risk is, what if you're in these scenarios, what if your short sale doesn't succeed? That's the first question you should ask. It is better to let investors buy your property sometimes, but you're going to need a lawyer to do it because most investors will not buy a property that's in foreclosure because you'd have 2 years a right of redemption under California foreclosure protection laws. So you need to be certified by an attorney, and then they can buy it from you. If someone's willing to buy your house from you and you're in foreclosure, most likely. Oh, I wonder if that just ended. I'm going to wrap this up because I'm worried that I'm supposed to end the stream. It probably has gone on a long time. So I'm actually going to put this page is so good. I'm going to put this on my front page and just explain where it came from. My name is John McConnon. I will talk to you more about this. I am thinking that there's other things I want to talk about, and I have a YouTube channel, UpsideDownRealEstate.com. Actually, I have two. One has the stuff from 15 years ago, but it wouldn't let me into my own account. You can see my picture in all the videos, but I couldn't get in, so I took out my winnerscheck.com and I made it Upside Down Real Estate. So I'm going to be doing a lot more work on Upside Down Real Estate on YouTube rather than this one. That's my intention right now. But if you have any questions, just go to UpsideDownRealEstate.com and give us a call. Right now, consults with people are free like they were in the beginning of the last market. I eventually did start charging because I was spending so much time on the phone. I was like, I'm not getting anything done. So I started charging. But right now, I'm more than happy to help people in California who are interested, or people. Really, I can help people with respect to short sales because I can refer them out to a lawyer realtor team. I might even, maybe some of the people I used to do are still around. I could do that, but I can't do legal work in other states or legal advice in other states. Thank you. Talk to you later.